380 million years ago, some stuff pushed some other stuff, and now billions if not trillions of dollars worth of the world economy completely depends on this one tiny town. If that's all you needed to know, thanks for stopping by. But if you want a little more detail, stick around. This is Spruce Pine, North Carolina. Population, 2,194. Median income, about $29,000 a year. High purity quartz mining operations, 2, which collectively supply 80% of commercial HPQ in the world. But what is this special sand? And why is it so important? And why do they only have it here? Understanding Spruce Pine's quartz situation begins with, and bear with me, understanding how microchips are made. You know microchips from their work in your computer, your phone, and your refrigerator for some reason. But did you know that, in order to function properly, they need to be made from 99.9999999999999% pure silicon? Meaning that for every 10 trillion atoms in there, only one can be literally anything but silicon, or your phone won't turn on and you'll cry. Luckily, silicon is one of the most abundant elements in the Earth's crust, making up 28.2% of the thing, second only to oxygen. Unluckily, silicon has a bit of an anxious attachment style and never naturally appears in its pure form. Instead, it's usually bound up in some kind of silicate, like quartz. From there, it's a big honking industrial process to whittle it down to pure silicon, a process that I will oversimplify for you now. You start with a high purity sand, the kind of thing you'd melt down to make glass, but you don't melt it down to make glass. You heat it up until you trigger a chemical reaction that detaches the oxygen atoms from the silicon ones. This will leave you with 99% pure silicon metal, which sells for about $1 a pound, but to get the chip stuff, you'll have to convert your silicon metal to 2 separate compounds, one which can be treated into something called polysilicon, which is so pure that it sells for $10 a pound. This is the kind of stuff that can become a solar panel, or if it's even purer, a microchip. One tricky thing though, if you want to make this lump of polysilicon into a microchip, you'll have to melt it down, and you can't exactly pop it in a Tupperware and zap it. You need to put it in something that's strong enough to survive the ungodly heat it takes to melt it, but that also won't leak impurities into your precious 99.119% pure silicon at such high temperatures. And so far, we're only aware of one container you can do that in. A small, single-use crucible made of, you guessed it, extremely high purity quartz, more often than not sourced from Spruce Pine, North Carolina. That's right, folks. The entire tech industry relies on this special town's special sand, not for a raw material in microchips, but rather for a raw material in the mixing bowl you need to cook microchip in. But it's not just for the crucibles. In the process of turning a silicon crystal into a bunch of chips, you're working at such a small scale that a speck of dust or a loose atom can ruin everything. So the work is done in rooms orders of magnitude cleaner than an operating room, and a lot of the tools used there are also made of spruce pine quartz. But still we ask, why spruce pine? Because while there's quartz basically everywhere, geologically speaking, Spruce Pine's rock is built different. Before we even had microchips, folks like the Corning Glass Company and literal Thomas Edison were hauling in the pure sand from there to make their stuff. It all began a while back when what we now call Africa collided with what we now call North America, and the friction created enough heat to melt all the rocks between 9 and 15 miles, or about 15 to 24 kilometers below the surface. Then, over the course of 100 million years, it all cooled down and hardened. There was no water around when this was happening, meaning nothing to carry impurities or extra molecules or whatever from everywhere else in the cooling rock, resulting in an absolutely massive deposit of extremely pure material. That all started happening about 380 million years ago. It was a further 230 million years after those rocks chilled before the Himalayas even started forming, another 45 million after that before the first Hawaiian Islands popped up, and about 5 million after that before the Rizzler was born. And in all that time, as far as we know, the conditions for forming such a mass of high purity quartz didn't occur again. HPQ does exist elsewhere in the world. The next largest known deposits outside of Spruce Pine are in India and Brazil, but in most places it occurs, there's either not enough of it, or it's not pure enough to make a mining operation economically worthwhile. See, it's not as simple as ripping the rocks out of the ground and selling them to GE to make crucibles. HPQ, like silicon, has to be purified even further to get crucible ready, a process it's not worth investing in setting up if you've only got a little bit of HPQ to mine. It comes out of the ground marbled in with iron, feldspar, and mica that you have to separate it from. Once that's done, you'll be left with quartz pure enough to sell as really fancy sand for the golf bunkers in Augusta, but not pure enough for the chip people. For that, you'll need to treat your sand a couple more times to dissolve any mineral molecules that hung on the first time. After that, you should have quartz at a level called iota 6, pure enough for crucibles. Better yet, you could be at level iota 8, which is 99.9992% pure and sells for $10,000 per ton, several thousand times the price you could fetch for the same amount of normie sand. And while it is theoretically possible to purify some worse quartz to this level, or create it artificially, it's far easier and cheaper, at least for now, to start from the absolute best stuff, the vast majority of which comes from spruce pine. But some are a bit uneasy about the grip this little Carolina town has on the global microchip industry. For one thing, it leaves said industry pretty vulnerable if, say, a massive hurricane were to hit the area, dump 2 feet of rain on Spruce Pine, wash out roads around the mines, cut off utilities and other services, strand the people who work there, and completely halt mining operations for a time. That happened in 2024 when Hurricane Helene hit, and who's to say it couldn't happen again as extreme weather events get more and more common. Also, if you're from China and you love tech manufacturing and you hate getting hit with massive tariffs from a half-dead idiot, you might not want such an important corner of your economy to rely on shipping in sand from the States. Perhaps that's why, in April of 2025, China announced that, goody goody, they found deposits of HPQ on their own soil, though they did not announce how much, or how long it would take to get a mining operation going, or what that would cost. So maybe they're just trying to freak us out. But joke's on them then, because I'm not freaked out because I barely understand what's going on. So at least for now, and probably for a while, spruce pine remains number 1. The raw materials base for the vast majority of an estimated $2.12 billion chip-making, equipment-making industry. And I would say congrats to them, but it seems like that doesn't actually do much for the town itself. After all, the 2 big mines are quite automated, with a couple dozen people on each shift instead of the hundreds you might expect. And they're both owned by foreign conglomerates, so the profits from Spruce Pine's rocks mostly head to Antwerp. So congrats, I guess, to Antwerp. And congrats to you, HI viewers, because now you can dazzle friends and strangers alike when you tell them what kinds of containers you can and can't melt pure silicon in. I promise it'll be handy for at least one of you. But you know what'll be handy for all of you? A subscription to this video's sponsor, Ground News. Like quartz, not all news is created equal, and ground news is designed to show you the impurities, the misinformation, political bends, or biased ownership that can obscure the truth. With their tools, you can pull back the curtain on bias and really develop your own opinion. Here's how it works. Let's say you want to learn more about Trump's potential tariffs on imported semiconductors. You go to that story's page on Ground News, and they list over 100 articles that have covered it, sorted by political bias, rated on their factuality, and with their publisher's ownership listed right next to their name. You can see who's covering the story, i.e. whether one side of the political or factual spectrum is running further with it, and scroll through all the headlines next to each other to see how different folks are trying to frame it for you. It's such a great way to get the full picture of a story and make sure you're getting good information from places you both trust and understand. And better yet, right now I'm offering 40% off their Vantage subscription. So if any of this sounds good to you, head to ground.news/halfasinteresting and sign up today.